My name is Eleanor May Carter, but most people in my town just call me Grandma Ellie. I am 79 years old, and I've lived nearly every day of my life on the same piece of land. Our family farm, stretching across acres of rolling fields, apple orchards, and a red barn that's older than me. This farm isn't just soil and timber. It's the heartbeat of my family's history. My father worked it, his father before him, and then my late husband Henry and I poured our lives into it. Together, we raised 3 children, planted every tree you can see, and survived winters so harsh they froze the water in the barn buckets solid. It's funny. When you spend a lifetime in one place, you start to believe it's untouchable, that nothing can ever separate you from the land beneath your feet. But betrayal doesn't come with a warning. And sometimes, the people you trust most can tear down what strangers never could. I had always been proud of my family. My children grew up running through these fields, barefoot in the summer, chasing chickens and laughing until the stars came out. When they grew older and moved to the city, I understood. They wanted something different, something easier than the hard life of farming. I didn't hold it against them. I stayed, and the farm became quieter, lonelier, but still full of love. Years later, when my grandchildren began to visit, I felt alive again. My favorite among them, though a grandmother shouldn't pick favorites, was David. He was my daughter Carolyn's son, and from the time he was little, he showed a curiosity about the farm that reminded me of Henry. He would follow me around the barn, asking questions about the cows or climb the apple trees just like his mother used to. I thought he loved this land the way I did. I thought he loved me. But life has a way of showing you truths you wish you never had to face. It all began one autumn, just a few years ago. I wasn't as strong as I used to be. Arthritis had taken its toll, and my steps were slower, my hands stiffer. David, now a grown man in his 30s, started visiting more often. At first, I was grateful. He offered to help with small chores, took me to doctor's appointments, and even stayed over sometimes to keep me company. I can't tell you how happy it made me, to feel needed, to feel loved. I baked his favorite pies, shared family stories, and even told him things about the land I had never told anyone else. In my heart, I thought, this boy will carry on the family legacy. But slowly, the tone of our conversations began to change. David started asking questions that felt strange. Grandma, do you ever worry about what'll happen to the farm when you're gone? Or, don't you think it's a lot of work for you at your age? Maybe you should start thinking about, arrangements. At first, I laughed it off. I'm not planning on going anywhere just yet, I told him. But deep down, a seed of worry was planted. What I didn't know was that while I was baking pies and telling stories, David was plotting. He wasn't thinking about heritage or love or family. He was thinking about dollar signs. You see, over the years, our little farm had become valuable. Developers wanted the land for housing projects. The kind of money they offered could tempt anyone. But for me, no sum could ever replace the memories etched into this soil. One evening, David brought over some papers. He said they were routine documents for property insurance and medical care. My eyes aren't what they used to be, and the print was small. I trusted him. I didn't even put on my glasses. I just signed where he pointed. I had no idea that with those careless strokes of my pen, I had given him what he needed to set his betrayal in motion. Weeks passed, and I noticed little things. Letters arriving that I didn't understand. A man in a suit coming to the edge of the farm, surveying the land with a clipboard. I asked David about it, and he brushed me off with that charming smile. Nothing to worry about, Grandma. Just routine checks. But one Sunday, everything came crashing down. My neighbor, Mr. Thompson, came rushing to my porch, his face pale. "Ellie," he said, "is it true? Are you really selling the farm?" I froze, my heart thudded in my chest. "What are you talking about?" I asked. He handed me a copy of a notice, an announcement about a court date regarding the sale of my property, my farm, the land I had never once agreed to sell. And there at the bottom was my own signature, or so it appeared. My blood ran cold. My hands trembled as I stared at that signature, the curves of my name twisted just enough to look real. That was when the truth struck me like a lightning bolt. David had forged my signature. He was trying to sell the farm right out from under me. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. This was my grandson, the boy I had rocked to sleep, whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose smile once melted my heart. And now, he was willing to erase me, to steal the very ground I stood on just to fill his pockets. But my story doesn't end there, dear listener. Because while David thought he had written the final chapter, he had underestimated the strength of an old woman who refuses to be silenced. The day of the court hearing arrived. The courtroom buzzed with lawyers, developers, and even some townsfolk who came out of curiosity. David sat tall, confident, convinced his scheme had already succeeded. The judge called the case forward, and just as they were about to proceed, the doors swung open, and there I was, alive, standing, holding the proof that would shatter his lies. Before I tell you about the courtroom and the betrayal that nearly broke me, I need you to understand what this farm really meant, not just to me, but to generations before me. Because without knowing the heart of this land, you might not understand why I fought so hard to keep it, even when the people I loved most turned against me. I was born on a cold January morning in 1944, right in the upstairs bedroom of this very farmhouse. My mother used to tell me that when she first held me, the snow was falling so heavily outside that it covered the windows like a white curtain, sealing us off from the world. She wrapped me in a quilt her mother had stitched by hand, and she whispered into my ear that this farm would always be my home. And she was right. I grew up surrounded by fields that seemed endless to my young eyes. Summers were filled with long days of haymaking, my bare feet scratching against the dry grass as I carried bales with my father. Winters were harsh, snowdrifts that reached the windowsills, mornings when we had to break the ice on the water troughs before the animals could drink. But through it all, this land gave us life. We ate from its gardens, drank milk from its cows, and felt the steady rhythm of its seasons in our bones. When I married Henry at the age of 21, he joined me here. He wasn't a farmer by blood. His father worked at the post office, but he quickly learned. And together we carved out a life. We built an addition to the farmhouse, planted apple trees that still bear fruit today, and raised 3 children under this roof. Caroline, my eldest and David's mother, Samuel, my middle child, and Ruth, my youngest. It wasn't easy. Farming never is. There were years when drought threatened our crops, winters when livestock fell sick, and storms that tore down fences faster than we could rebuild them. But there was pride too. Pride in seeing the barn painted fresh every spring. Pride in watching my children race across the fields, their laughter echoing like music. Pride in knowing that we were part of something bigger, this legacy of earth and toil and family. As the years passed, our children grew up and moved away. Caroline married Richard, a man who always seemed more concerned with money than people, though I held my tongue. Samuel became an engineer in Chicago, and Ruth a teacher in New Hampshire. They visited when they could, though not as often as I wished. That's the way of the world, I told myself. Children grow, they leave, and parents are left with memories. But the farm never left me. After Henry passed away, it became even more sacred. His fingerprints are still everywhere, on the old tractor in the shed, on the fence posts we hammered in together, on the apple trees we planted hand in hand. I often walk the fields at sunset, whispering to him, telling him how the day went, as though he were still beside me. So when my grandson David began visiting more often, it felt like a blessing. He was Caroline's boy, tall and handsome with that easy smile that could win anyone over. He reminded me of Henry in some ways, curious, eager, full of questions. From the time he was little, he loved the farm. I can still see him as a boy, running through the fields with a stick, pretending to be a cowboy. I thought perhaps he, out of all my grandchildren, was the one who understood what this land meant. When Henry passed, David was there at the funeral, holding my hand as I wept. Later, he sat with me on the porch, quiet, respectful. "Grandma," he said, "I'll always take care of you. Don't you worry." My heart nearly burst with love for him in that moment. I believed him. That's why, years later, when he began helping me around the farm, I didn't question his motives. He said he wanted to spend more time with me, that he worried about me being alone. He mowed the fields, fixed broken shutters, even drove me to town for groceries. For the first time in years, I felt less lonely. I thought, this is what family is for. This is why we work so hard, to pass it down. But looking back, I see the signs I missed. He asked questions about the farm's finances, about the deeds, about the value of the land. At first, I thought he was just curious. Then he began bringing over documents, routine paperwork, he called it. My eyesight wasn't what it once was, and truth be told, I never had much head for legal jargon. I signed where he pointed, trusting him as I once trusted his mother. As I once trusted Henry, I didn't realize I was giving him the tools to betray me. And here's the thing. Dear listener, betrayal doesn't come all at once. It creeps in like a shadow at dusk, unnoticed until it swallows the light. One day you're baking a pie for the grandson you adore, and the next you're staring at a court notice saying your home is no longer yours. I remember the moment it all unraveled. My neighbor, Mr. Thompson, showed me the notice about the farm being sold. At first, I thought it was a mistake. There must be some error, I told him, my voice shaking. But then I saw the signature at the bottom, my name, scrawled in a way that looked enough like mine to fool a stranger. My own grandson had forged it. The ground beneath me seemed to crumble. I sat on the porch for hours, staring at the fields, wondering how the boy I once cradled in my arms could do this to me. My chest ached, not from age, but from heartbreak. I wanted to believe it wasn't true. I wanted to believe there was some explanation. But deep down, I knew I wasn't just fighting for my land anymore. I was fighting for my dignity, my memories, my very identity. And though my body was frail, my spirit burned with a fire I hadn't felt in years. The day of the court hearing came. David was confident, smug even, thinking I wouldn't show. He thought his scheme was airtight, that I was too old, too weak, too blind to stand in his way. But he had forgotten one thing. This farm had made me strong, stronger than he ever imagined. And when the judge called my name, the entire courtroom turned as I walked in. Alive, standing tall, ready to reveal the truth. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in spirit. The walls were painted a dull beige, the kind that made everything feel smaller, flatter, lifeless. I clutched my cane, my fingers trembling, not just from age, but from the weight of what was about to unfold. At the front, I saw David, my grandson. my flesh and blood. He wore a crisp navy suit that didn't belong to a farm boy. It belonged to a businessman, someone who thought he'd already won. He didn't see me at first. He was laughing with his lawyer, confident, relaxed. I noticed how he leaned back in his chair, legs stretched out, like this was just another easy victory. I almost turned back. My heart whispered, "What's the point, Margaret? He's young, sharp, and you're old, tired. Let it go. You can't fight him." But then I remembered Henry. I remembered his calloused hands gripping mine as we planted those apple trees, promising that we were building something that would last generations. I remembered holding my newborns in this house, watching their first steps across the creaky wooden floor. No, I couldn't walk away. When the judge called my name, the sound cut through the courtroom like thunder. David froze. His lawyer stopped mid-sentence. Slowly, David turned his head, and when his eyes landed on me, the color drained from his face. "Grandma?" he whispered, barely audible. I walked forward, every step steady, deliberate. My cane clicked against the floor, echoing through the silence. For a moment, no one breathed. "Yes," I said firmly, my voice louder than I thought possible. "I am Margaret Collins, and I am very much alive." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge adjusted his glasses, looking down at the file in front of him. "Mrs. Collins," he said cautiously, "according to the documentation provided, you were declared deceased last month. Are you prepared to testify today?" "Deceased?" I let the word hang in the air, turning my gaze toward David. "Well, Your Honor, I can assure you I'm not dead. Though it seems my grandson here wished me to be." Gasps, whispers. David shifted in his seat, his smugness collapsing into something uglier. Fear. His lawyer scrambled, shuffling papers. "Your Honor, surely this is a misunderstanding." But I didn't let him finish. "A misunderstanding?" I snapped. He faked my signature, sold my land, and filed papers declaring me gone. "Tell me, is that a misunderstanding or is it betrayal?" The judge rapped his gavel, demanding order. "Mrs. Collins, please sit. We will get to the bottom of this." I sat, but my eyes never left David. He avoided my gaze, staring at the table, his jaw tight. Flashback to the deception, the court proceedings gave me time to remember how we got here. How I missed the signs. It began small. David would say, "Grandma, these forms are too confusing for you. Let me handle them." I trusted him. He was family. He was the boy who used to chase fireflies in my yard, who once cried when his dog died and buried it under the oak tree. But slowly, the paperwork became constant. "Just sign here, Grandma. It's nothing important, just for taxes." My eyesight had worsened. My hands trembled. I didn't question. And then one evening, as I sat by the fireplace knitting in silence, I overheard him on the phone. His voice was hushed, but I caught the words. "She won't fight. She trusts me completely." My stomach turned. I told myself I misheard, that I was paranoid. But deep down, I knew. When I received that notice about the sale of my farm, the truth struck like lightning. David hadn't come to help me. He had come to take everything. "The courtroom battle, Mr. Collins," the judge said, addressing David now. "Do you have anything to say in response to these accusations?" David stood, adjusting his tie, trying to regain control. "Your Honor, my grandmother is confused. She's not well. She's old, and her memory isn't what it used to be. She must be mistaken about what she signed." My blood boiled. "Not well?" I barked, standing despite the judge's attempt to calm me. "I may be old, but I know betrayal when I see it. I birthed your mother, David. I fed you when you were a boy. I gave you love, shelter, and trust. And this is how you repay me?" The courtroom was dead silent. Every pair of eyes was on us. David's lawyer tried again. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this sounds like a family dispute." The judge held up a hand. "This is more than a family dispute. Forging documents, filing false death certificates, attempting to steal property, those are criminal acts." He turned back to me. "Mrs. Collins, do you have proof?" My neighbor, Mr. Thompson, had come with me. He stepped forward holding out a folder. Inside were copies of my true will, my identification documents, and the notice he'd brought me. The signatures didn't match. And there was my so-called death certificate, filed by David himself. The judge examined everything carefully. His frown deepened with each page. Finally, he looked up. "This evidence is damning," David panicked. "Grandma, please," he pleaded, his voice cracking now. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted a better life. You don't understand how much this land is worth. It's wasted here. You don't need it, you're old. I could have turned it into something big, millions of dollars. You could have asked," I interrupted, my voice steady, though my heart was breaking. "You could have asked, David, and maybe, just maybe, I would have given you part of it. But instead, you chose lies. You chose greed. You chose to kill me off on paper while I was still breathing." His face crumpled, but I didn't feel pity. "Not anymore. The turning point." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Collins, you will answer for this. As of today, the attempted sale is null and void. Mrs. Collins remains the rightful owner of her farm. Furthermore, given the forged documents, there may be criminal charges to follow." Gasps erupted again. David sank into his chair, his face pale as chalk. For me, the relief was overwhelming, but it came with sorrow too. Because the truth is, I didn't win that day. Not really. I kept my land, yes. I kept my home, my memories. But I lost something greater. Trust in the boy I once loved like my own son. As we left the courtroom, I caught him looking at me, eyes wide, desperate. "Grandma, I'm sorry," he whispered. I paused, gripping my cane tighter. My heart wanted to forgive him. But my soul knew better. "David," I said quietly, "sorry doesn't bring back trust. And once it's gone forever." And with that, I walked out of the courthouse, the sun shining down on me. Free but forever changed. When I stepped outside that courthouse, the world felt heavier and lighter all at once. The weight of betrayal pressed on my chest, yet the air carried a kind of freedom I hadn't tasted in years. My cane tapped against the steps, and each sound reminded me I was still here, alive, stronger than they thought. But strength doesn't erase the ache of loss. I lost more than just the risk of my land. I lost the boy I once trusted, the grandson whose laughter once filled my home. David wasn't just family. He was supposed to be my legacy. And to think, he tried to bury me with lies before my time. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the ones you feed at your own table. I often sit on my porch now, rocking gently, watching the apple blossoms sway in the wind. The farm is still mine. The trees are still standing, their roots deep, their branches wide. They remind me of Henry, of my children, of the life we built here. Roots don't break easily, but trust? That shatters with one strike. People ask me, "Margaret, do you hate him?" And I say no. Hate is heavy and I've carried enough. But I don't forgive him either. Forgiveness is a gift, and he hasn't earned it. What I do carry is a lesson, and that lesson is what I leave for you. If you're listening to my story today, remember this. Protect what you love, even from those closest to you. Love deeply, but never blindly. Even the kindest heart needs boundaries. David thought he could erase me. He thought a few papers, a forged signature, a cold lie could silence my voice. But here I am, telling you my truth. Still alive. Still standing tall. And maybe, just maybe, my story will keep someone else from trusting the wrong hands with their future. So tonight, as I sit beneath the stars, I whisper to Henry, "We won, love. They tried to take it, but we won." And with every breeze that dances through the orchard, I feel his answer.